Fox College football analyst Joel Klatt is presented each week by MyBookie.ag. Use code NEXTROUND to double your initial deposit. That's MyBookie.ag, code NEXTROUND. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie.ag, code NEXTROUND. What is up, Klatt? How are you today?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Doing fantastic. Thank you. It's been an active first hour and a half of the show, as you might imagine.
I bet.
Yes.
I bet.
And wait till you see this Alabama basketball team this year. They are so deep and so good. So good.
I mean, that hurts my heart. I don't know, like, what your fans have got. I mean, like, you can't just say that.
It's into times, Klatt. I brought this up earlier. I mean, as much as people hate this, we are in an NFL model now. And I go back last year, the Chiefs lost 4 of 6 in the regular season. They get to the postseason, they win a Super Bowl. So, like, I think it's really difficult right now to say this team is going to win a national championship. You got to get hot in November, get healthy, clean up the mistakes, and I think there's 8 or 10 teams that could win this thing now.
Look, you beat Georgia, and then you lose to Vandy and Tennessee. So, yes, 100%. And it comes down to mistakes and details. This is something that I think none of us really knew how this was all going to pan out. The super conferences and the 12-team playoff. But we're starting to see, now we're a bit past the halfway point in college football, and I think that we're starting to see all of this kind of unfold. And what I see now is there is more parity in college football. I think anybody in the top 10 or 12 could beat anybody on any given Saturday. And now, are some better than others? Yeah, but that's the same case in the NFL. Look at Kansas City right now, right? So, yeah, there are 3 or 4 teams that I would say are better than everybody else, but that doesn't mean that they're unbeatable. And let's face it, 6-7 years ago, there were 3 or 4 teams that were like, they ain't losing, unless they play one another. And now that's expanded out. So what ends up happening is in these games, execution and details become much more important. And it's not just about how you recruited and what the talent of your roster is. So you're starting to see that play out, and you see that with Alabama. You see that with Texas last week in their loss to Georgia. Their offense just made like some egregious mistakes, and then once you do that in a matchup style game, which Tennessee Alabama is a matchup style game, talent is fairly equated. Georgia Texas is a matchup game, and the team that makes the most mistakes loses the game. That's just kind of the bottom line. And then to your point about, yes, the Chiefs lost 4 of 6. They got hot at the right time. Let's just put it this way, right? Like 10-2 Alabama with a win over Georgia is 100% in the college football playoff. No question about it. 9-3 Alabama, even with a win over Georgia, probably not in the playoff. And by probably, I mean like 95% sure not in the playoff. So the drastic nature of what these next games can do to the season and to the narrative for Kalen DeBoer in Alabama, you can make a strong case that Kalen's entire tenure kind of rests in the balance of these last few games.
Jalen Milroe, never known for his accuracy last year, but I thought it improved a lot so far this season, especially the Georgia game. Was late or behind or just wild throws in this game on Saturday. When you looked at it, whether it was highlights or breaking down the tape, did you notice something different with his feet, just things he wasn't doing correctly to get the ball on target?
Yes, I did. I thought that he was disconnected from his feet more so than I had seen him in previous weeks. Like, had him in the build up to Wisconsin, had him in that game, obviously, watched the games prior and after that on tape. I went back and flipped through it, albeit quickly, the game tape of this last one against Tennessee. And I just saw a guy that wasn't in rhythm. And to me, rhythm is not, accuracy and timing. Are the feet of the quarterback connected to his processing? And it's a hard thing to kind of figure out and decipher, but what I try to do, guys, when I watch film is I see the route picture and the structure of the route. So what picture are they trying to present to the quarterback? And in what timing? And then is the quarterback connected to that? Is his read connected to the picture? Are his feet connected to the read? And it was disconnected last week. And I thought the evidence was that ball where Ryan Williams is wide open on that little over route late in the game, and he just misses him. And he just misses him wildly. And part of it was I just felt like he was a bit disconnected, jumping a little bit through it. Maybe his, sometimes you get in these situations where you're facing a great defense, the crowd noise is up, and you're playing a little bit faster than the rest of your offense. And then at that point, like you get jumpy with throws and they sail on you a little bit. That's kind of what I saw. But that certainly one, that was one that definitely hurt. He'll be fine. I think that it's common for all of us to sit here and just talk about a guy like Milroe. And unfortunately for Milroe and any quarterback, but Milroe specifically on this team, guys, is I feel like, and maybe this was the case a couple of years ago with Bryce Young, and I don't want to be revisionist in my history, but I just don't feel like Bama is great around him. Ryan is great, and I feel like the run game should be better. But it feels like there's too much pressure on Milroe to be perfect in order for them to win these big games. And maybe I'm wrong in that, and you guys certainly watch it a little closer than I do, but that's the way it feels to me.
Joel Klatt is with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. His weekly appearance presented by MyBookie.ag. Code next round. Excuse me when you sign on at MyBookie.ag. Code next round. I'm going to preface what I'm going to ask you by saying I think Kalen DeBoer is a very good football coach.
Sure.
I think Kalen DeBoer needs to be given time to build his version of Alabama, and I think he will be. I think Alabama will be fine in the long run. So with all those disclaimers out of the way, I think this is a poorly coached football team right now. Am I wrong to say that this is a poorly coached football team? Even a good coach can have a poorly coached football team, which I think is the case with Alabama right now.
Yeah, I think that it's when you say like poorly coached or things like that, there a lot can be encapsulated in that. And I'll just go to one definition of it, and that would be like the standard of details. Okay, so most coaches are decent coaches. Okay, let's put it this way: every coach teaches what to do. And what are the details and so on and so forth of the concept defensively and offensively? What is the game plan? Good coaches teach you how to do it. So they're really good about the fundamentals, and then they're stickler on those types of details in terms of, okay, how do you execute what we want to do? And then the great coaches teach why. Like, why are we doing it that way? And the why gets to this level of buy-in from the player where the player starts to understand the importance of the how, those details of how to execute. Okay, so the reason that I bring that up is because, and I think this could be a case study also in the Georgia-Texas game as well. You guys for 17 years saw Nick Saban, regardless of opponent or game situation, lose his mind, right?
Yeah, yeah.
We see that with Kirby. We used to see that with Urban Meyer. We see that, right? And I'm convinced that those guys, after they climbed the mountaintop and they started to realize what it took to win matchup games, what it took to win at the very top, they understood that once talent is equated, then the biggest differentiator are the details, okay? That's the biggest differentiator. You either don't make the mistakes or you do make the mistakes. And if you do make the mistakes, you lose. And so when you're playing Louisiana Monroe or Mercer or whatever, and you're up 40, those coaches are still losing their minds because they're focused more on the details than the result of the game. Okay, so it goes to this. Are you internally focused or externally focused? Internally focused individuals focus on process and details. Externally focused individuals focused on results. Okay, so they'll focus on the scoreboard, the result of the play. Results-oriented people lose track of the details because details in a mismatch can go by the wayside and you can still win by 30. So let me give you an example of this, and it's not in the Alabama game specifically. The interception that Quinn Ewers threw in the second quarter of the Texas-Georgia game on Saturday, It was what I would call a stick route into the short side of the field. So the number 2 receiver, this case was a slot receiver into the boundary side, and he's going to run a stick. Now, a stick route is like a 5-yard out, but it's not really like 5 and run out. It's more like 5 and either turn out versus zone or strike away from a man defender and then run away. Now, there's a number 1 receiver outside of him. Okay, and his only coaching point, it's called kind of like a for the love of the game route or a bus ticket route, which basically means like you ain't getting the ball, bro. But your detail is imperative for the play. You have to take an outside release on the corner, regardless of coverage. But more specifically, it has to be done versus cover 2. Because in cover 2, the corner has no deep responsibility, and he can sit on the flat route of that number 2 receiver, and his eyes can go inside. So if you release inside, you're drawing the eyes of the corner directly to the route that you're trying to throw. Well, in the Texas-Georgia game, the number 1 receiver takes an inside release as they're trying to throw a stick, and the corner just falls off and intercepts the ball. Good details by Georgia. Great job by Georgia, no doubt, but not an extravagant play by Georgia. They're just doing what they're coached. Meanwhile, Texas is not. Sean Payton called it a bus ticket release when I was with the Saints, and it's a bus ticket release because if you don't go outside as a receiver, the number 1 receiver, you're on the first bus out of town. You're released. Okay? So against UTSA or Mercer or Louisiana Monroe or even the bad teams in your own league, does it matter really if you take the inside release? Probably not, because at worst it's an incompletion and you probably complete it. Okay, so if you're results focused and you just think that that's a quality play because it was a completion earlier in the season and it doesn't matter because you won the game, then you're not focused on the actual detail, which could get you beat in a matchup game, which is you have to go outside. So in those games that it's a 30-point margin and Nick Saban is beet red with veins popping out, screaming at his players, it's about the details because he's internally focused. So back to your question. This is a long answer to a simple question. When you say things like, I think this team is poorly coached, I immediately go to the accountability of the standards. Everybody's coaching what, how, sometimes why, and Kalen certainly is. Look at his success level. But how accountable are you holding everybody to the standards on a play-in and play-out basis? That's what a really well-coached team, that's what it's about. They are internally focused on the details. When I watched the film of the Georgia-Texas game, Georgia's defense was excellent. You know why they were excellent? Because they were always in the right position, eyes in the right spot. You could tell they were like robots, and you're like, well, yeah, they're internally focused. You know, like they are in those positions more often. So I don't know. I get excited about answering a question like that because I think it's more about accountability of standards than it is schematics, if you know what I mean.
Well, and back to a point you made a couple of questions ago, like Alabama shouldn't live in a world where they rely on elite quarterback play to win games. You know, Cam Ward at Miami is relying on that right now, and it's working out because he's playing at an elite level. But Georgia...
playing with fire, though, right?
Yeah,
it's
every week.
You can get beat any week.
Yeah.
And back to your point on Georgia's defense, like Carson Beck turning the football, 0 touchdown passes, 3 picks. He turns it over 3 times. They still win on the road against the number 1 team by double digits.
That's exactly right. Your point is 100% right. Georgia's offense is not great, guys. Like, he's thrown 8 picks in the last 4 games. Beck has 3 versus Bama, 3 versus Texas. But guess what? Guess what that defense provided him? Do you know that they built that 23-0 lead? And their longest drive was like 20 yards. Like, they didn't do anything offensively and had a 23-0 lead. They got the ball, Georgia I'm talking about. They got the ball on the Texas 13, scored a touchdown after the corner blitz strip sack, 7-0. Then they get a penalty on a kick return. They have to punt the ball away. Good return. They get the ball first and 10, and I call it P and 10 possession. You know, the first play of the possession and 10. P and 10. Texas 28-yard line. Texas's defense plays well. Guess what they did? Hold them to a field goal. It's 10-0. P and 10 on the next series after that stick route interception I was talking about. P and 10. Texas 34-yard line. They score. It's 17-0, and they got the ball on the 13, the 28, and the 34 of Texas.
Wow.
Of Texas. So, like, Beck didn't have to do anything. Did you know that Georgia drove the length of the field one time and won the game 30-15? One time. And in that drive, they had to call a double reverse flip back trick play that went for 43 yards for an explosive play in order to drive the ball to score. So this idea that they like dominated Texas is actually not accurate. What they did was they played detailed execution defense. That's what they did. And because of that, they set themselves up for success while Texas was making mistakes. Great job by Georgia, but nothing extravagant. Their offense didn't really do anything. Beck didn't have to do anything to win that game, honestly.
I do want your thoughts on the change call after the trash dumping in the end zone. They seem to eventually get the call right, but
but I don't care, right? I don't care. I really don't. Do you know why all of us roll our eyes when we see the parents give in to petulant children screaming for candy at the grocery store? Because it's absurd. Because we know that they're going to deal with that the next time they're at the grocery store, and then the next time they're at the grocery store. And the only way it ends is if you actually have a spine as a parent and you tell your son or daughter, although mostly your son, no to the Snickers or the Skittles. That's just, we all know that. All of us. And yet those officials gave in to the petulant child. I understand that the call eventually was correct. Now, we can discuss the poor officiating around college football because it is abundant. Heck, man, Tennessee was absolutely offside. I don't know. I like Greg a lot. I think Greg is really good. I think he's trying too hard in Alabama games to not be an Alabama alum. That was offside 8,000,000%. And he's like, I don't know. I do. Greg, he was offside. Yeah. Like, I'm sorry, but like, and like I said, Greg does a great job, and that's a tough position in a big moment. I've never had to do Colorado in like a big game like that. I've done Colorado games, but not like that. So I give him an abundant amount of grace in a position like that. That's tough, in particular with Vol Twitter out there and exactly how they can go. But that was offside. Officiating is bad, is what I'm trying to say. Let's get back to like task at hand. The call was wrong. Changing it was egregious. I mean, that's the bottom line. And Kirby Smart, whatever you think about him, and you can have whatever opinion you want about Kirby Smart. What he said after the game was 8,000,000% accurate. You have now encouraged fans to throw a fit, knowing that there is a chance if we just give them time and then our home people can put the video up on the Jumbotron, that we can change the call. Just like the child in the grocery store knows you're teaching them, if you give in, you are encouraging that same behavior. Now, I have called for, and I did it on my show. Guys, you guys know I call UFL in the springtime. The UFL actually has something that I think should be adopted, certainly in college football and maybe more roundly, and that's the Super Challenge. You guys are familiar with this?
Oh, yeah. We got the world champion Stallions in town. Of course we're familiar with it.
I mean, three times. Skip knows what I'm talking about. So the Super Challenge in the UFL goes like this. Each coach has an opportunity to challenge whatever he wants. It can be an offside call. It can be a holding call. It can be a pass interference call, but he only has one. You get one Super Challenge. And that's the only way forward, because any other fix to this situation is not good for, by the way, sports in general, because you're teaching high school kids that they can throw a fit in a high school basketball game or at a high school football game. Like they set officiating relations back decades with what they did on Saturday night. An egregious overturn. Granted, they got the call right. That doesn't matter. It's the standard set and the precedent set. So the only way forward is a Super Challenge. And the reason is because if you do nothing, that precedent then becomes egregious and everyone's going to throw a fit. You can't have that. Well, you can't say, well, we're also going to penalize the home team if bottles are thrown onto the field, because then the road fans could possibly throw bottles on the field and get the opponent penalized. So you can't actually penalize them on the field for what the fans are doing in the stands, because you don't know exactly whose fans are throwing what maybe you could do it from a section or whatever, but you don't know if a rogue fan is out there. So you can't do it that way. The only way forward is to actually have a super challenge where Steve Sarkisian can throw a flag and the entire fan base, the 100,000 in the stands, know like, okay, we're going to revisit this. We don't need to throw a fit, right? Kalen DeBoer would have thrown a super challenge on the offside. There's been plenty of times. I think Ryan Day might have thrown a super challenge on the OPI. He might not have gotten it, but I think that should be adopted into college football. I think that the super challenge might be something that we all looked at and looked at favorably.
In the moment, what Kirby seemed so pissed about was that they looked at the Jumbotron.
Yes.
Well, of course.
He kept pointing at it.
At one point, that was banned in SEC stadiums. You were not allowed to show questionable call replays in the stands. That has since changed since we do have the reviews and we were able to show that.
You could tell Kirby was saying you stood there and watched it on the board and saw that you missed it as while you're overturning it.
And by the way, they've got headsets on. There's no doubt Birmingham talked to them in the headset.
100% Birmingham was talking to them. But that's what we just can't set that precedent. Either make that a rule or not, Klatt, but you can't overturn a call by what you see on the scoreboard.
It was egregious. And by the way, like the $250,000 fine for Texas. Are you kidding me?
Nothing.
That's like a quarter of Sark's bonus for GPA. Like who cares? Like what are we talking about here? Like that's and by the way, if they would have come back and won, it's the best $250,000 ever spent.
No doubt.
in Texas.
No doubt.
Like, come on, give me a break. And Greg is an excellent commissioner. He and Tony do a great job in each of their respective conferences. They need to get a hold of that. It's officiating in general, guys, is egregious. We had another review with Miami. Every week, the ACC officials and the ACC Review Center is bailing out Miami.
Yep.
And oh my gosh, I got to tell you, it's bad.
I got to ask you, I was completely wrong on Colorado. I thought it would be a disaster of a year. And the way their defense, look, and I know you called the game last week with Fafita, and there is a blueprint on him now. It's, you pressure him right up the middle, and he's got problems. But for Colorado to hold them to 7 points in Tucson, win that game going away, now they're sitting at 5-2, and they didn't get one vote in this poll where...
Yeah, but don't worry, guys. The AP voters still... One person voted for Nebraska still, even though they lost by 49.
But, realistically, Colorado...
So stupid.
Oh, my God. They should be...
So stupid.
They should be getting some love.
The three of you, who votes in the AP?
I've done it before. Brown's done it before.
I've done it before.
But it's been a while since I've done it.
So none of you are. Yeah. So I just didn't want to offend anybody. But
no, it's a terrible poll.
Yeah. Alabama over Michigan State last time I voted. Semifinal game. Yeah.
There you go.
But you got to be impressed, though.
Colorado, I'm very impressed. Yeah, to your point, like 100%. So, Lance, we know what they are on the offensive side. They don't run it great. They try to run it a little bit, but Shedeur is very good, and they've got an elite core of wide receivers. We know what they are offensively. The defense has been a revelation. Do you know they're in the top 20 in the country in tackles for loss per game? Like, that's – and you know the group that's playing the best and who their coach is? Defensive line. Warren Sapp.
Yep.
And they're playing aggressive, man. And this Livingston guy, this defensive coordinator, he's a young guy. He had never coordinated before. He was a secondary coach in the NFL, and he's come in and done a marvelous job for them defensively. And you got to look back at that. And I know, like, part of this with Colorado is that it's somewhat like has been tongue-in-cheek, like, oh, they're not really for real. Guys, they have a lead over Kansas State at home last week and squander it with some poor play in the last 3 minutes. If they can hold, they have the lead in the last 3 minutes. If they beat Kansas State, they would have been 6-1 and undefeated in the Big 12 right now. As it stands, it's going to be difficult to get into that Big 12 championship game, but not out of the realm of possibility. There is no team on the rest of their schedule that you wouldn't say that Colorado can't beat. And I told you before the year, and I remember, Lance, you were kind of scoffing at me. I thought 8 or 9 wins, and now that's certainly in play, if not more.
If not more. 10-2's on the table.
Yeah. I got to give Deion a lot of credit, man.
Think about what they were before he got there and what they are now. So, like, with all the flash and all the noise, guy's a damn good coach, man.
Yep.
Like that team is real. They're certainly in the upper half of their conference, maybe upper third in their conference. I think the question becomes like, okay, well, what do you do when Travis isn't out there, which he's not right now because he's hurt, and what do you do when Shadour's not there? So, moving forward, it'll be interesting. But in this day and age, guys, if a guy can come in with some amount of charisma and plan in the transfer portal, things can turn around in a hurry. We've now seen it at Colorado in the first 2 years, and how about Indiana? Kurt Signetti, guys, Indiana is freaking good. I watch him on film, I'm like, oh, okay, this is real. Then we roll out there and we do the game, and it's like this defense is even getting better. Now, are they going to win the national championship or even the Big Ten? I'm not sure. But they are absolutely one of the 4 best teams in the Big Ten. Think about that. Indiana, they are without question one of the 4 best teams in the Big Ten right now.
Yeah, and they're getting in. I said it earlier in the show. Like, I think even with 2 losses, they might not have quality wins, but they have beat the hell out of everybody in front of them.
Dunaway's a doubter. He doubts Indiana.
Yeah.
Look at you. You got your arms folded.
I've been hyping Indiana up all
But look
season.
at their schedule.
He
We do
wants
this
me to
with
be
the
wrong.
SEC. We did this with A&M the other week. You start looking ahead at their schedule.
Yeah.
And Lance, I got to give you credit because it wasn't until you said something that I actually went and I was like, wait, hold on a second, A&M. And then I was like, oh, absolutely. A&M is for real and could go to the SEC championship game. Look at Indiana's schedule. And take away the brand bias of the teams that they're going to face, Washington, Michigan, Ohio State. And you quickly realize they're undefeated, and they're only going to be an underdog in one more game when they face Ohio State.
Yeah, quick question.
But see, when you guys say, but look at their schedule, that's telling me, well, if they played a different schedule, they wouldn't be one of the best teams in the country. Y'all keep saying, look at their schedule. Well, I am looking at Indiana's schedule. So are they one of the best 12 teams in the country?
In relation to how good they are. So look at the rest of their schedule in relation to how good they are. Basically just like, are they favored or not moving forward?
Okay.
Right? Like A&M's the same way. And here's the deal. And Dunaway, we're going to have to wrap our minds around this. Until the leagues weight schedules based on previous year's finish, we're going to have unbalanced conference schedules that are drastic. Look at Missouri, look at Florida, look at Missouri, look at Oklahoma.
Yep.
Well, the same thing can be said in the Big Ten, and it just so happened Indiana got one of those favorable schedules. That's not their fault. Hey, and by the way, they're the number 1 scoring offense in the country, so they're doing to that schedule what any good team should do. Right? If you're a really good football team and you get Nebraska in and you feel like you're better than them, guess what you do? Beat them by 49.
Yep.
Let's put it this way. If Michigan were to play as an undefeated and they played a 5-1 Nebraska team that some of us think like, yeah, they're probably ranked. Matt Rule, he's doing a great job, and they beat them 56-7, we'd be like, oh, watch out for Michigan. That team is real. So I want to give Indiana the same credit that we would some other brand.
I understand. I was looking out for you, though, because Nebraska, Ohio State, big noon kickoff. Nebraska wins that game. This is a monumental game this weekend. And it still is a good game for you, Nebraska, Ohio State. I was just hoping the Huskers were coming off a dub for your sake.
I mean,
you'll be on the Indiana Ohio State call, so I mean, it's going to make up for the back end.
I think we're in line to potentially get that Indiana Ohio State game.
All right.
We'll have Penn State Ohio State next week.
Right before voting. We learned that from you right before the election.
that?
Yeah, Penn State Ohio State.
Hey, and they may be doing still a recount for the Indiana Ohio State game, so they may still run some ads.
That's right. That's going to be big for Fox.
I got to ask you, USC best 3-4 team in college football?
No.
All that bandwagon.
Oh man. Although I know you guys are going to a break. Do you sense at all that this USC team reminds you of like Sark's second year in Texas?
I'd have to think back.
Yeah, I got to think back.
Yeah, I can't answer that on the fly. I'd have to think back on that.
If it does you, I'll agree with you. If it does you, I'll say yes.
A little bit, only because like they're young up front. Remember how like Sark brought in all those offensive linemen that are still there, by the way. They've played now for 3 years. And it was like they were taking some lumps and losing some games that they shouldn't and close ones. And everyone's like, what's going on with Sark? Remember his first year, he loses like 6 in a row. And then his second year, it's like they're still losing some of those games. And yet he had this young core of linemen. And I'm like, there's something about that USC team that in a year or two, I feel like they could be really good, but I don't know if people are going to give them that amount of time. The contract might give them that amount of time. I think they would owe them like $72 million after this year.
Yeah, that's another thing. I think we need to take another look at firing coaches as quickly as we have in the past.
Do it more, do it less.
No, I think we do it
Due to
less.
how fast everything can change.
Yeah.
Like
I think
quickly you
Billy
can turn it
Napier
around.
doesn't need to be fired based on what he's done
No,
this
I mean,
season.
he's turned them around. They're playing better football.
I don't disagree with any of this. If you look back in the history of college football, you'll see that it's the rarity is a fast turnaround, in particular to the highest levels of success. I mean, it took Tom Osborne like 20 years to win a national championship. It took Nick Saban 6 years. It takes everyone 6 or more years to win a national championship. And we want this to happen like year 1, year 2, year 3. That just is so rare. Stoops did it at Oklahoma. Switzer did it, but Switzer took over a pretty good program. You know, like those things just don't happen.
All right, he is Joel Klatt. As Jim mentioned, Nebraska, Ohio State, big noon kick Saturday. Thank you very much, Klatt. Have a great week.
You got it, guys. Have a great day.
All right, buddy. You too, Klatt, with us. Courtesy of MyBookie.ag. Code next round when you sign on. MyBookie.ag for double your initial deposit.